Welcome to Conversations in Social Care, a unique and refreshing podcast for the social care sector, brought to you from Care Talk.
I'm Melanie Weatherly, Chair of the Care Association Alliance and your host for today. I'm delighted to be joined by Nadra Ahmed, CBE DL, the Chairman of the National Care Association, Dr. Cecilia Akrisie Anim, CBE FRSA FRCN, former President of the Royal College of Nursing, Lucy Campbell, the CEO of Right at Home, and Professor Deborah Sturdy, CBE FRCN, the Chief Nurse for Adult Social Care within the Department of Health and Social Care. Could we start by each introducing yourselves, please, and telling us a little bit about your specialisation in the sector? Nadra, could you kick us off, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Melanie. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. So thank you for the invite. I'm Nadra Ahmed. I'm the Executive Chairman of National Care Association, and I'm also the Chair of the Care Provider Alliance, which brings together 11 national bodies across the country to get the messages out. So we're a very united sector, despite what people might say or think. I've been in the field of social care for over 40 years and used to run my own care services, my own home care services. I continue to support a number of not-for-profit veterans charities to keep my hand in, to keep, be on the ground. So I'm constantly in and out of services. I absolutely am committed to social care. I think it's the best thing that you could ever work in. I feel it's a real, gives you a real buzz when you get everything moving in the right direction. I know there's been lots and lots of challenges, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Nadra. Cecilia, would you mind going next?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm Cecilia Anim, originally from Ghana, has worked in the NHS as a nurse, clinical nurse specialist in women's health. And my passion is in dementia and the menopause. What started me off as a nurse in acute care is during the pandemic, I realized that there are a lot of work to be done in social care, especially with what we all know. I don't want to go into details. So I developed, on top of my two passions, a passion to support social care and workers and nurses, with my background also as a trade union rep, health and safety rep, and also becoming an RCN activist, which led me to become president of the RCN, and I served 2 terms. I have since retired, but I'm still greatly involved in the works of the RCN, greatly involved in my local school, where I have been a governor for almost 30 years. And I believe that we have to support children from a very young age to become good citizens in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Sturdy, really delighted to be here and talking about a topic that's very important when you look at our profile of women working in social care. So really delighted to be involved in this conversation. So my background is obviously as a nurse, and I've worked across health and social care. I've worked in an academic post and I've worked in a policy post previously. So quite a breadth of experience. And I think working in all those different settings as a woman, I think I've experienced sort of kind of a number of challenges. So I kind of I feel quite passionate about the voice of women actually at all levels of organisations. I think the thing that's kind of, for me in terms of social care is that this is a fantastic sector. It's a can-do attitude, it's flexible, and its agility to deliver services in really creative ways, and it doesn't get the recognition it so deserves. Not only does it do so much, I think it has so much more potential in terms of being our system solution. So I feel very passionate about it. I am overwhelmed frequently by the people that I meet, the work that they do in a variety of settings, in those small and those large organisations, those individuals who make a difference every day. And I feel incredibly privileged to be in a role like this where I can help others reach their potential and influence not only what's happening locally, but what's happening nationally as well. So a really timely conversation, I think, about women. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And last but by no means least, Lucy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Melanie. So I'm Lucy Campbell, CEO of Right at Home UK and also Vice Chair on the Home Care Association. I just wanted to say it is an absolute privilege to be invited onto this panel with this extraordinary collection of women who clearly have so much amazing experience and are just doing incredible in their roles today. And I think in terms of social care, it's absolutely the people that make it just the best sector you could ever wish to work in. And that's at every level. And I think one of the ladies made the point of it is such a collaborative sector to be in. And I think now so more than ever, given the challenges that we're facing, I came into social care almost by accident about 8 years ago. I've always worked in the for more than profit sector, if you like, always been driven by making a difference. And my previous role, I was CEO of a social enterprise that supported people at transition periods into their lives to get into franchising as a form of supported self-employment. And Right at Home was one of the brands we worked in. And I was just absolutely in awe of what they were trying to achieve in terms of getting quality care to vulnerable adults. And I wanted to be part of it. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be, sitting here 8 years later as CEO of the company. So it's been an amazing journey. And yes, I wouldn't want to be in any other sector.
Thank you. What an amazing group of women that we have gathered here this morning. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Can I ask you first, what was your inspiration to join the social care sector? And at what point did leadership become a part of this vision? Who would like to start?
I'm happy to start, Melanie. So I came into it by accident, which is I think Lucy was probably alluding to as well in some ways. I mean, I think it was for me. My background is education, and I was a professor in a university, and I've worked in local authority. So that was my sort of background. But when I got married, it was really interesting because my in-laws felt that I wasn't to work outside. So they set up a care home and made the decision that I would run it. I knew nothing about it at all. So this is how sort of subservient women type thing. I know you're all thinking to yourself, what, Nadra? But it's absolutely true. And that's how it sort of came about. I took it on with a passion. And I have to say, I've always really enjoyed conversations with older people. It kind of has always been something I've done. And when I got into this role, it made me realise, and at that time, people used to drive up to the care homes in their cars and decided that's where they wanted to live. It was a completely different environment. And they wanted to, because they were lonely. And we started to work with the workforce. There was no training packages. So my educational background gave me that opportunity to build up a training program and move in that direction. And I have to say, I've never really looked back. It's been tough. It has been tough. There's no doubt about it. In the 80s, it was pretty easy, actually, because people walked in. But as the as the 90s sort of came in and we progressed, we've got people who used to be in long stay hospitals, and that's what we're looking after right now, and that's what makes the job even more challenging on an ongoing basis. I think one of the things that I would say to you is, when I was doing the shifts and the night shifts and the cooking, Saturday night, you get a call to say the chef's not coming in on Sunday morning, very common, and having to kind of do that. Every role brought something special to me at that time, and I learned so much, which makes you appreciate the workforce, and it is a predominantly female workforce. And it makes you realize that it's very special people that work in social care. It's not just a job. It's not a vocation. It's actually a profession that you come into, but without all the qualifications, because people talk about you as unskilled. Tell me somebody who's unskilled who's sitting there with somebody who's dying. Tell me they're unskilled. And so for me, it just feels like being at home. That's for me social care.
Thank you, Nadra. Lucy, what inspired you to come into social care, and when did you think about leadership? When was that part of your career plan?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned just before in the intro, virtually all my career has been spent in the for more than profit arena. So essentially trying to make a meaningful difference in whatever role I've been doing has been critical. And then, as I mentioned, almost serendipitously, I came into Right at Home. And, you know, social care has won my heart, and it always will. I couldn't imagine working anywhere else. And I think, you know, as the years go on, you just genuinely fall more in love with the industry than ever before. And, you know, especially now, whether or not, you know, it's always in the media for the right reasons, to finally start to really have a spotlight shone on the sector, and really starting to see the media promote social care for the right reasons, just adds to why, you know, I really want to be part of the movement, to create critical positive change for the sector, as I'm sure everybody on this call does want to do. In terms of leadership, absolutely, I've always been incredibly ambitious. So I've been in managerial roles from a fairly young age. My last two roles have seen me, you know, heading up as in a CEO position. But, you know, when I joined Right at Home, I didn't join Right at Home thinking, you know, I want to be the CEO. I joined thinking I want to be part of this incredible organisation, which is doing such an incredible job to improve the lives of the vulnerable adults that it serves. And, you know, as the saying goes, you know, do a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And, you know, I can honestly say, hand on heart, you know, no matter what the challenge is, and there are a lot, and I'm sure we'll go on to speak about them at length in a bit, I never get up in the morning with that feeling of, you know, I don't want to go to work, because I feel very fortunate and very privileged to be in a leadership role within the sector where I can influence positive change.
Thank you very much. Cecilia, you did hint in your introduction about what attracted you to support the social care sector, but I wonder if you could expand on that. And also from your own personal point of view, when did leadership become part of your career plan?
Thank you very much. Leadership became part of my career plan because working in the NHS in a senior role, you got to take maintaining standards of care, supporting those in your care, as well as giving the staff you are working under some aspects of progression and to develop in their role. Also, I think leadership is in all of us. There has to be something to drive that change. You need to see something that will say, I don't like what is going on. That I developed during COVID. And for me, care, it doesn't matter which sector of the healthcare systems you are delivering care. Care in the community, care in the acute sector, care in the public health. It is all care. That needs compassion, kindness, learning on the job, and making changes to people in your care. So during COVID, I was, looking at all the issues. And before that, I had been involved in social care through Care Talk. And we have had some webinars. And my other passion is learning disability. because I've got a child with learning disability. So for me, if I don't need social care when I'm old and decrepit, maybe my daughter might, and the service has to be fit for purpose. And we realize that no matter how people in social care are struggling to keep the service going, to maintain care and standard, they are actually overlooked. It's a Cinderella service. You work in a care home. We need to have parity of esteem with acute sector. We need to improve the life of people working in social care. So therefore, I developed this passion and I said, I am not going to sit back and let this happen. So I got in head on and we started something called Movement for Improvement, which Deborah helped us to open. And COVID came and everything fell apart. But we will pick it up. It is my passion. I was in the NHS for 45 years. So now it is social care. And it doesn't matter where I am, it is care. Maintaining standard and maintaining safety and well-being of staff and rewarding them, value them for what they do. The change is in all of us. Leadership is in all of us. So we need to drive that change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And Deborah, as a nurse, what attracted you to social care, and when did leadership become part of your vision?
It's really interesting, kind of reflecting as I'm sat here. I think I've been on this pathway a long time. My clinical specialism is older people and people living with dementia. And I decided on that my third clinical placement as a student nurse when I was so appalled at the way people were treated in an NHS setting. I was going to leave nursing at that point, and my tutor said, you've got two options, you can leave or try and do something about it. I thought, I'm going to do something about that. So I've been parallel, I suppose, to social care for quite a long time, and I went off and did a specialist course and kind of focused my career around it. And when I was at kind of midpoint, I took some time out and did my master's degree full time, and I funded that through doing agency nursing. So I did went to university all week. I did agency nursing in care homes at the weekend. So I went as a very senior nurse doing that. And the thing that struck me was these incredible people that were working alongside me, and how frustrated I felt about how nursing was much maligned. And, you know, I think we're moving incrementally away from that. But nursing in social care was seen as the place where people, you know, didn't actively choose to go. And yet I saw incredibly skilled practitioners. So that kind of sparked something in me. I went and did an academic 3 years in a university, looking at sort of standardized assessment instruments, part of a global research project, again, setting care homes. So I think there have been these steps. And then when I went and did a kind of joint health and social care role, again, looking about commissioning services in social care settings. So I think I've been on this journey for a long time. It's like a pathway that's kind of naturally been created for me. And the reason that, you know, I kind of decided this kind of final part, I suppose, of my full-time career is that I really want to be able to help others be the difference, and give other people opportunity. The great thing, I think, as you kind of age, and I've got, you know, 42 years nearly experience behind me, is it's about helping other people flourish and develop and giving them that opportunity and impart, and I think your wisdom and your skills to enable others. So I just feel that I've got a skill set that I've gathered over all these decades, and I want to put those to best effect. And I just feel that, you know, back in those days of doing those night shifts, of just seeing these phenomenally able practitioners, both our registered and unregistered practitioners, doing incredible things with little resource. So to be able to help influence and shape that's kind of been my drive. And I think as a leader, when I look back, I think I've always had that kind of, you know, I think it's Cecilia's point, I think I've always had that kind of thing in me about wanting to make a difference, and that's what motivates me. is just making a difference. And I think my career has been driven by not about me, I want that job and I want that job. It's been about, if I had that job, I could influence that bit more. So that's what kind of drives me, gets me out of bed in the morning, is how do you make it, and how do you make a difference for other people? So you know, I think that's kind of inherent in who I am, and probably has been for, you know, I even look back to my, you know, the sixth form in school, and the kind of social enterprise stuff, as we'd call it now. You know, the things that we were doing then, I was very passionate and driven about that, and that was developing a kind of support for local older people. So I think I do think that leaders, there's something kind of inherent in this all, and I think it's about when you're given opportunity to grow and develop as a leader, and just driven to make a difference for other people.
Thank you. Very interesting discussions from all of you. And I think what is quite interesting is that no one talked about leadership in terms of their own career and ambitions. Everybody's view of leadership is, what can I do to make a difference, and to make a difference for other people, either the people who draw on our services or the people who deliver them. And maybe that's something we ought to perhaps think about, that's what makes leadership in social care perhaps different than leadership in other areas. So I want the next one to be quite brief. Could you give me one challenge along the way and how you overcame it? I know we've all come across lots and lots of challenges, which is why we're always such good problem solvers. But if you could just pick up one that maybe would be useful perhaps for someone coming along behind us. Lucy, would you like to start on that one?
Yes, I mean, you know, as you've just alluded to, you know, I think, you know, as a CEO, you have, you know, a myriad of challenges which come past your desk on a regular basis. I think for me, the biggest challenges, and I will draw on one, are always really ones where I guess emotions are always at play. And you know, Right at Home it's a national franchise system. And I think, you know, one of the things that we are absolutely committed to is upholding the standards of Right at Home in terms of quality. And we have an obligation to all of the franchise owners that we absolutely maintain those standards for the integrity of the brand, and of course for the safety and the well-being of the individuals that we support. So, you know, I had one particular challenge when I had one franchise owner that did not comply, and our view was that individual was becoming, you know, a significant risk. And it was particularly challenging because we did deem that he shouldn't be in the network, but we also needed to absolutely ensure that the individuals would have great care, continued care, and you know, no disruption to their service. I can't go into incredible detail, but you know, I will say, you know, we always set out with trying to deal with these things amicably. The individual was particularly difficult, and we did end up needing to go to court, which was a first for me. So you know, it wasn't easy. There were lots of lessons learned, but what really was, apart from getting the best outcome, that franchise owner did move on and that all the clients were safe and well looked after, is that when we did go to court, the judge complimented us on our handling and ethics of the whole process and trying to do the right thing. I think, you know, any challenging situation that I'm in, I always try and, you know, go back to my values and absolutely make sure that the decision that I'm making is for the right reason. And where I can, I'll take a highly collaborative approach. But obviously, in this particular instance, you know, collaboration really wasn't the answer. But doing things for the right reasons absolutely was. And you know, as a result, I think, you know, the whole entire network have seen that, you know, where we have had to take difficult action and make difficult decisions for the right reasons, for the greater good of the network and the people we're supporting, we will do that.
Thank you, Lucy. Deborah, could you think of one challenge you've come across and how you overcame?
I think there've been like all of us will have multiple stories to tell. I think I'm going to take a slightly different approach to it. I think it's I think one of the things that women suffer from, and I absolutely put myself in this boat, is that kind of imposter syndrome. So I think throughout those various points in my career where I felt maybe slightly intimidated in an environment, I think being subjected to kind of misogyny, being in very male-dominated situations as the only woman, and having to sometimes dig really deep in that kind of that overhanging of that imposter syndrome, dig deep in yourself, and to assume your position in those situations. And I can think of something that happened a few years ago, not so long ago, but a very having to kind of deal with a very dominant male colleague who quite kind of bombastic in their views, and kind of threatening in terms of my own registration, my own accountability to the people that I was there to look after. And I think having to seek, I think my advice in this situation, you seek counsel from your trusted colleagues and those trusted people around you. So I think there have probably been multiple occasions, but that sense of having to sometimes act apart, dig deep, find that self-belief, and actually get that assurance from other people around you when you're dealing with difficult situations. And I think particularly, it's not by no means exclusive. I think it happens to men as well, but sometimes in those very male-dominated, I was the only woman on a board, for example, at one point, and it can feel slightly different. And I think you just have to have that kind of be cognizant of that, and I think seek that kind of mentorship and support outside your immediate working environment sometimes, to kind of find that confidence, to kind of I suppose validate yourself. So I think there'll be multiple challenges, and equally I've been treated not so well by female colleagues as well, and I think it's about, I think reflection's really important for us all. I think to stop and think and learn from the situations that have been challenging in your career is as valuable, if not more valuable, than when things have gone really well. So I think just that kind of having that network, having those supports around you is absolutely critical, I think, to anybody. But I think sometimes as a woman, I think we suffer imposter syndrome far more than men.
Thank you, Deborah. And it's quite interesting that both of you actually, what is the natural way for working in social care is collaboration. And we like to think that everybody wants to get the best out of everybody else. But sometimes when you come across someone who doesn't want to do that, that I think is where we as fellow leaders, whether they're female or male, need to support, because it isn't normal for us not to collaborate. But there are times when you have to just stand up for yourself. So Cecilia, could you pick out a challenge from your career and tell us how you overcame it and what you learned from it, please?
I think my challenge, there are a lot of challenges, but I will pick three: my race, my gender, as well as being a mother with a disabled child, whereby you need to take time off to go with her to hospital. My race, can she do it? Is she capable of doing it? There were always questions and doubts in people's mind, which you are aware of because of the way they interact with you, the way they question your duties. So therefore, there were a lot of challenges in this area of three. And being a woman also, having the motherhood penalty of, by the time sometimes you go to church, you're already tired because my daughter was not sleeping well and I'm already tired and I get to work. So you are actually always working on tentacles. But you need to have the right values. You need to have the commitment and the perseverance to continue with what you have set up yourself to do. And how I overcame it was I had allies in the workplace. I had advocates, And my manager was very, very supportive. So therefore, HR was also supportive in helping me change my duties. But the issue of, can she do it? Is she capable? Was there. But through that, I developed some sense of extra strength that you are doubting me, I'm going to prove that I can do it. So it was a strength for me to overcome all these doubts in people's mind. And the race issue, you just have to work with it, because it's not my fault that I am of this race. Therefore, I have to live with it, and people have to live with me the way they find me.
Thank you, Cecilia. And I don't think it's a fault at all to be the race you are. You are who you are, and that's fantastic and wonderful. So thank you all for being so open about that. Moving on a little bit from there, we've got a responsibility to our female colleagues to impart our experience, success factors and failures. And could I ask you to think for a moment about how are you or we collectively making sure that they can extract this knowledge from us positively? Or if we're not, what could we do to make that available to them? Who would like to start?
I'm happy to.
Go on, Lucy, go on.
Now, I was going to say, yeah, it's knowledge, but not just, I think, in the sense of kind of facts and education, but more so in terms of imparting your experience, in terms of dealing with the various challenges of the journey. You know, I have quite a number of younger female staff, and one of the things I really notice about them is things that are out of their control, they take on as their own personal responsibility, and that burden of pressure they carry around on their shoulders. And part of that comes from them being completely conscientious, incredibly caring individuals, and wanting to make sure they do right by everyone. But sometimes they can find themselves almost trying to be all things to all people. And it can at times create anxiety, and, you know, it could result in work-related stress. So one of the things I try to coach and mentor them on, and it's something actually I've been very, very privileged with my boss, who is a male, Ken Deary. He's been an amazing mentor to me as I've kind of progressed into leadership. And he's taught me to try mentally prepare for a challenge every quarter. And also to know with each challenge, it passes. And with each challenge, you grow with experience and you can better equipped to deal with the rest. And I think, you know, I try and impart that knowledge onto my staff, but also to talk about experiences and not be afraid to be vulnerable. I think that's something we see a lot with women. They're a lot more comfortable with being vulnerable and talking about their feelings and experiences than sometimes some of our male colleagues. And I notice that when I go to kind of female focused events. You know, I'm fortunate because I work in the franchise industry. We go to some fantastic female focused events in franchising. And the atmosphere and culture there is different. It is more open. And it's only by, you know, somebody who spoke, you know, about the imposter syndrome, you know, these things need to get spoken about and openly and transparently. And people realize it's not just them, and they can address those things that are limiting them, whatever it might be, and get the right support. And that's how I try and support my staff.
Thank you, Lucy. Deborah.
Yeah, I think mentorship, you know, Lucy talks about mentorship. I think mentorship's really, really important. And I try and mentor as many people that I can, and lots of people approach me, and I think that's absolutely invaluable. And I think when I look back to my early part of my career, I wish I'd had a mentor. And some of the things I dealt with really badly that I could have done with that kind of guidance and support with. And equally, I think our culture, as we're developing that culture around coaching, how important that is. Again, to help people through, as Lucy says, those kind of challenges, and reminding people that they do pass. As frustrating as it is, and as much screaming as you do in your head, they do actually pass. So I think for me, mentorship, and I think try and be a role model, and I've always tried to do that. you know, particularly for younger women that I've worked with, to be somebody that that they can see as having, you know, a strong voice and a voice of clarity and reason around a table. I think that role modeling bit is absolutely vital for those coming behind us. And again, you know, as I think, you know, I'm nearer the end of my career than I'm, you know, a long way from the start of it, is how do we help that generation behind us, and actually recognize that they're different. I see that all the time. They're, you know, they are different, and I see some of the younger women that I come across who've got, I think, got much more confidence than I had at their age, and with that also there's sometimes, you know, part of that mentoring bit is about tempering some of that as well, that because you know, I think you have to have that experience as well as confidence. So it's how we can, because of, you know, at this point with the experience we have, actually help people to recognize actually you need not only the confidence, but you need the experience bit as well. And it's back to, I think so I think those kind of mentoring, reflective conversations we have with people is really important. And I think the other thing that we're really missing is actually, how do we talent spot? How do we look at those really young aspiring people, and how do we help them through that kind of talent pipeline into the future? And I think there's a gap that we need to fill. I'm not sure how, or you know, but I think there's something that we need to be doing, something about, you know, getting those people inspired to be our future leaders.
Thank you. And finally, Cecilia, other than just by being who you are, which in of itself is inspirational, could you just share with us what you've done to impart your knowledge, your wisdom to the next generation of female in social care?
Well, what I did is to give people a voice to state what they want. It's not speaking for them, but amplifying what they are looking for, what they want to talk about to drive that change, advocate, have an allyship, an open door approach to professional development. And if they come up against any difficulties, be there to support them. It is very important that not everybody want to do what this course or the other and whatever, but it is important if they are in a network. I encourage a lot of networking for the people that I come in contact with, because they sit and listen to other people's experiences and they learn from them. And sometimes these networks become a supportive area for mentorship, as Deborah said, and coaching, and also to drive a cultural change in the workplace. I also am a believer in promoting rights of workers. If you think this is what you want to do, and the person said you can't, ask one question: why? If they don't give you the right answer, escalate it. And you will have the support to be able to take your case forward. And this happened to me when I was going to do my nurse prescribing. And somebody said, what do you want to do a nurse prescribing course for? So I said, why do doctors prescribe? What stopped me as a nurse to prescribe? In the end, with a bit of a battle I went through, that is where race also, and being a woman, played a part in some of the challenges we face. So you give them allyship, coaching, mentoring, a voice, and then amplify what they want. Don't speak for them. Let them take the role and be behind them to push that door open for them to walk in.
Thank you. I think that's some really good ideas, some really good thoughts. The Women Achieving Greatness in Social Care Awards were initiated to help to profile our women leaders and rising stars in the sector. What can we as women leaders do collectively and practically to support these rising stars to reach the top across the system, not just the people who are privileged to come across one of you three? Who would like to start with this one? Deborah.
I'm happy to jump in. I think there's something, and my thoughts aren't completely formed, but there's something about some coordination somewhere of the, people who are perhaps about to retire, who want to kind of continue to give in some way, how we actually match those people to these very experienced practitioners and leaders, managers who can actually be those kind of mentors for people. So I think there's something about a more systematic way rather than kind of random random people coming across anybody who can be that mentor. So there's, for me, this is formalizing it in some way, because I think that's part of how our legacy, I think, is about how we ensure there's a talent pipeline becoming behind us, but it needs some coordination, be that through people applying for some sort of program of mentorship, of some sort of network, because I think the other thing for me, particularly in social care, is how that networks are really important. Lots of people working in small organisations in our state, how do you network people together? So there's something for me about some collective thinking about how we can do this in a kind of managed and sustainable and systematic way, that we actually afford everybody equal opportunity in getting help and support if they choose to want to pursue a career and a leadership position.
Thank you, Deborah. That's really, really interesting. It's not the first time I've heard that conversation, so maybe it is something we need to really.
And reactioned it then.
Yes, Lucy.
It's interesting. I've got quite a few thoughts on this. So, I mean, first of all, I think we're fortunate working in a franchise framework that we have the opportunity to afford individuals, female and males, the opportunity to get into the sector without any experience. And they come in as business owners, and they work with a registered manager, and as the franchisor, we're able to provide them with all the support and guidance. I will add, we only allow people to come into our network if they're getting in for the right reasons, and that's to absolutely make a difference. And it's been lovely, actually, over the period of time that I've been right at home, to see more and more women actually coming forward into those franchise owner positions. I think we've got about 35% of our network at the moment being representative of females. I think where our franchise owners are sometimes struggling, not all of them, but when they're, getting into maybe the later years of running the business, and they're wanting to find talent that could maybe step up to kind of a director level position, the talent pool isn't as wide as it could be. And I think it's because, unfortunately, of misperceptions in terms of careers in social care. And there's incredible talent in other sectors, but they don't consider coming across into social care because they just don't understand the opportunities. But they will definitely be individuals in other sectors that really, really definitely want to make a difference, because most of our franchise owners come from the corporate world, and they come into Right at Home because actually they want to make a meaningful difference. So I think, there definitely needs to be the collaborative piece. There needs to be a better education. There needs to be a framework for bringing people in at more senior positions into our sector, where they can get the on-the-ground experience that they need as part of the transition into our sector, and then bringing all the leadership skills with them. So yeah, that's what I think needs to happen. But certainly delighted to see the gradual shift in dynamic, having more females in leadership positions.
Thank you, Lucy. Cecilia, what can we do practically to support our rising stars to be the best leaders they can be?
I think first and foremost, we need that open door approach to professional development that will start in the workplace. We need to have systems and policies that encourage women, no matter what their background is, either with children, working full-time or part-time, create a provision whereby they can grow in the work environment. HR policies can help. with flexible working, coaching, mentoring, and looking for allyship, and actually put them with someone who will coach them, who will support them to develop. But we cannot do this and spoon feed them. A survey in the workplace to find out, where do you want to be and how can we help you, will be a start, so that we are taking the initiative of where they want to be, where they want to work, how they want to progress, taking into consideration their background, their responsibilities. And I think because most of the care sectors have a lot of women in the staff, it makes it very difficult. But unless we have policies that support women having to grow in the workplace, having to be able to develop, whichever way they want, we are not going to achieve this. Why are we still talking about this in this day and age? We need proper strategies in the workplace to support and help women. But first of all, let's find out what they want and where they want to go.
Thank you. Very wise words, Cecilia, because as Deborah said, the generation that we're hoping to support, they want different things than we would have wanted at that stage in our career, and we mustn't forget that.
Yes.
The next thing I'd like to look at, and Cecilia, you mentioned this a little bit so far, in what ways are diversity and intersectionality implicated in discussions around female leadership in social care? There's a view that the female leaders are just going to be the same as the male leaders, but female. Yeah. But that's not what we're looking for, is it? We're looking for true equality. So I just wonder, from your perspective, how do you feel that we are doing in that, and how could we get better at being truly cognizant of diversity and intersectionality? And actually, I think I'd like to add an extra bit to intersectionality, which is parenthood. Because parenthood is, it's not a disability, but it is often a barrier to achieving. So Cecilia, could you start us on that one, please?
I will start on that one. As I've already mentioned, being a woman sometimes is a disadvantage, and being a mother is another disadvantage, and sometimes your color is another disadvantage. Not in the eyes of myself, but in the eyes of what can she do. So there is a social categorization in intersectionality that makes it very difficult for people to see what actually can she give us, can she provide. They're looking at you in sections, categorize you, and that leads to discrimination and sometimes disadvantage. So we need to admit that this is there and work with it. It is very important to admit and work with it and decide, how do we overcome this so that people in that category are also looked at properly, support them in what they can offer and not who they are. Diversity is very, very important. A lot of work has been done in this area, but it looks as if we are looking at everything. We have to take one section and look at it, evaluate it, and then move on. We cannot look at diversity in every way, but look at it in sections. That is why for almost over 50 years plus, we are still talking about the same issue. We need policies that are fit for purpose. We need to create an awareness that a person's color, race, gender does not make her a good worker or a bad worker. But let's find out what she can do and how best we can support that person to be productive in that work area. And show, and acceptance is very important. And the person's rights also has to be respected. I wish we don't have to celebrate International Year every year. I wish we start celebrating what women has achieved over the years. It is very important. What have we achieved over the years? Can we move on from this place that we are standing, talking about the same issues? How can we move on and make it better for everybody, for women? And sometimes men also face these difficulties.
Thank you, Cecilia. Very wise words as always. Lucy, have you got any thoughts on how we make sure diversity and intersectionality are included in our discussions?
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really interesting, because I think, Melanie, you started off the point by saying, you know, it doesn't mean that women essentially have to almost present as quasi males in the workplace and be the same leaders. And I think, you know, going back, you know, not so long, I do think that females in the workplace felt that they had to present almost as if they didn't have any external factors, and they could absolutely, you know, turn up and show up as men, and almost as if they didn't have the other considerations. And, you know, something we talk a lot about with colleagues, male and female, is about the female load, and whether or not you like it. Generally speaking, when you speak to most women, they generally have more of a burden when it comes to childcare, more of a burden when it comes to the traditional domestic duties at home. You know, we haven't come that far that actually men are playing an equal role in the home. Now, I'm not saying some men don't, there's lots of men that do. But generally speaking, when I speak to most women in business, they are also juggling childcare. And I also do think that because of our genetic makeup, maybe, you know, when you do have to, you know, be a woman in the workplace, and you're putting your child in childcare very early on when they're very young, because you've got to, that burden of guilt and those sorts of things, you know, weighs so heavy. And, you know, this idea of you can have it all with absolutely no sacrifices, I think is a little bit of an elephant in the room. You know, I was only speaking to, you know, one of my franchise owners the other day, and she said to me, you just come across as if you've got it so together and everything, you know, is absolutely perfect. And I said, you know, absolutely not. You know, I'm very fortunate. I've got a job that I love, and I do have a very supportive husband that, you know, does do, you know, more than his fair share. But, you know, there's not times when you don't think, oh, well, actually, you know, perhaps I missed out on doing that with my daughter, and was that the right decision, that I was away for that many nights? And, you know, of course it impacts you emotionally. And I think that we've got to stop being afraid to talk about these things, and to, you know, generally talk about them in terms of considerations in the workforce, because what happens if you don't is that people kind of harbor them inside, and then they leave, or they decide that actually, you know, they can't have a space at the table with the other directors, because actually the other considerations of the female in the workplace are not going to be acceptable, and they're going to be perceived as a weakness and a barrier to them progressing, and that absolutely shouldn't be the case. I consider myself extremely lucky that, you know, I've got a wonderful boss who's absolutely done everything he can to empower me as a woman in business, but I know that's not the case for many, and it needs to be.
Thank you, Lucy. And I think there are also often women who pick up parental care responsibilities, aren't there? That tends to fall more to women, or women take it upon themselves perhaps more than the men do. So, Deborah, can I have your thoughts on this?
Yeah, just on that point, actually, we talked about parenthood, and absolutely get all those challenges and the guilt, but it also happens with those wider caring responsibilities. With aging parents, we know that women tend to be the people who have that wider caring role. The intensity and the you know, the impact of that, and my own personal experience, but most recently talking to a colleague who was struggling with her parents. And I think, you know, so I think we you know, we have to be quite rounded in when we think of responsibilities at home. And I think there's another element we've not talked about, is that actually for single people, the challenges for single people at work, who don't have that backup at home, who don't have that support, and that somebody can take the afternoon off because the gas man's coming or whatever it is. So I think with sensitivities and that obviously is both male and female, but we need to be a bit more. Again, it's my point about the generation coming behind and their different aspirations and expectations about the workplace. So I think we just need to give some consideration to that. And I think for me, one of the most powerful ways to talk about diversity is getting people with lived experience to tell their stories. And I don't think we do enough storytelling, and I think that is a really impactful way to make people aware of all these kind of nuances and challenges. And you know, and I think we expect so much of people who work in our sector to come and give of themselves. And I think we have to be respectful that there's a lot of stuff behind that individual that half the time we don't know about, or when we do know about, how we're going to support them. And I agree with Celia as well. You know, here we are still talking about the same issues. I think we should hang our heads in shame, frankly, about some of them. You know, we just launched last autumn the BME programme for colleagues and nursing colleagues with the Florence Nightingale Foundation. And you know, and there's a bit of me that kind of thinks, you know, the first time, and it's 2022 that we did that in, that's just not good enough, really. So, you know, but I agree, you have to kind of, you know, incrementally bite these bits off and try and make changes where you can. But I think we have a opportunity and responsibility to tell stories, have those kind of people share their experiences, because that's how we kind of raise awareness and make a difference by influence people's thinking and behaviours. Because actually thinking's great, but what you need that is to translate and change your behaviour.
Thank you very much. We're just about to wrap up now, but before I do, I think I've sat here listening to you and I'm thinking, we used to have this conversation about care planning. How do we make a care plan that meets people's diverse needs? Why can't we just do person-centred employment? It's exactly the same thing. So I think we just need to pick up what we do for others and start to do it for ourselves and our colleagues. And I think you're both right, Cecilia and Deborah, we need to get on with this, because it's more than time for us to do something about it. And perhaps that leads to our imposter syndrome. Maybe we think we aren't leaders enough to do this, but I think we are. So we need to crack on. So our final thing is, if you had one word of wisdom or caution to give to rising stars and women leaders of the future, what would it be? And who would like to?
I'm happy to start. I think it's about, you know, that it's that kind of letting go of the shackles of the imposter syndrome, assume your position at the table, use your power, and be the difference. And if we all kind of, you know, kind of committed to be the difference, we could really, you know, we could really do it. So I think we are empowered. We have a lot of talent and ability. It's about using it.
Thank you. Lucy.
Yeah, for me, it's about the resilience piece. It really is, as I mentioned before, you know, to really try and invest in your mental well-being, and part of that is to accept that there will be, you know, at least one challenge a quarter. Expect it, be prepared for it, and don't be too harsh on yourself about things that are out of your control. As long as you know that you're getting up and showing up and doing the absolute best that you can be, being the best you every day, then that is good enough. And you know, hopefully people will see that, and your resilience will build over time.
Thank you, Lucy. And Cecilia, would you like to end our conversation with a word of wisdom to our rising stars and leaders of the future, please?
I think there's a need for cultural change and holding to account, giving women a voice to drive the change and to keep pushing the door. And I will quote Jean White, who is the chief nurse officer in Wales, who said, "We have to be at the table where the decisions are being made. And if there is no room at the table, take your own chair and go and sit there and drive that change for women. We have to stop talking about this. We need to persevere. We need to persevere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all so much for a really interesting conversation. So I'm going to go out now, Cecilia, and buy a folding chair. And I'm going to take it with me to meetings that I go to, where we might sit at the table, but we're not really.
Yeah, take your chair with you.
Take my chair with me.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you all today. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.